Welcome to the Fantasy Audiobook. Marvel. Get the Twinkle fruit ability in database gene system. Chapter 61. Hank looked at X with slight surprise, and then Howard as well. Invest in mutant schools for free without charging a single ounce of return. Is there such a good thing? Good. Howard nodded slightly and smiled. Professor, don't be surprised. We've talked a lot about things in Washington before, and we've met Mr. Gideon Malik of the Malik family. In fact, Mr. Malik, although young and promising, had too much appetite to get genetic samples of mutants in exchange for a place for mutants in politics, which I did not expect. Quote, originally, I meant well, but I didn't understand the mind of the Malik family and rashly invited you over, which is my mistake. So, Professor Charles, I want to compensate you as a sign of my apologies. Hank on the side was slightly stunned when he heard this. Is this the reason for gratuitous? How do you feel as if you were forcibly looking for a reason? Shuzan couldn't see the slightest expression on his face at this moment, and he was silent for a while, and did not speak. The time I met Malik was really not very pleasant. Malik was very vigilant, and an electromagnetic field specially shielded from telepathy was placed at the place where he met. Originally, X-Shu didn't care much. After all, he was a person from a large family, and there were many secrets, so he was naturally not very willing to expose himself to a telepathic person without the slightest protection. But Malik wants mutant genes as a condition for political status, which is excessive. However, Mr. Howard, the amount of gratuitous investment written on this contract is not a small amount. You should not really be gratuitous, right? X-Shu suddenly said, I trust you. After all, Mr. Howard, you are different from the people of the Malik family, but there is no free lunch in the world. Mr. Howard, Charles is not a stingy person. If you want something else, within my ability, I will definitely help you. Quote. In that case, Howard said, then Professor Charles, I'll say it bluntly. Quote. Actually, to be precise, it's not a quid pro quo, because everything depends on the professor of your will. In my opinion, Mutant School is a place where all kinds of talent are born. I am committed to an organization called SSR, or Strategic Science Corps, and in the future I want to build this organization into an organization that can protect the world from evil forces, like Captain America's shield, and can guard world peace. Quote. Now that mutants are gradually known to the world, more and more mutants appear in the world, which is actually a great hidden danger. I investigated the data and learned that during the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962, he fought against an evil organization of mutants, right? With that, Howard looked at Professor X. XU nodded and said, yes, it was the first battle, and the opponent was an organization called the Hellfire Club. Quote. In fact, Hellfire Club disappeared in that battle, but it did not disappear. Howard said, maybe one day in the future, maybe it will appear again. And in fact, in the future, more or less evil organizations related to mutants will appear, and mutants are natural weapons for them. Quote. They study mutant genes, make genetic weapons, biochemical warriors, mutant super soldiers. Professor, you may not feel it, but in my position, I can feel the huge undercurrent hidden under the calm lake in front of me. Mr. Howard, are you trying to also form a team of mutant warriors? Quote. X's eyes flashed, and he had already heard the meaning of Howard's words. Howard nodded, just like the ex-policeman you formed when you were taught in the First War. Professor Charles, in mutant schools, there should be not only students, but also fighters, and that's what I want to say. Quote. Even if the professor is willing, I can let your students come to my side and conduct all kinds of learning, mentoring and training to face various crises that may arise in the future. Hank listened to Howard's words, and couldn't help but feel tearful. Howard's words just now were simply his heart's words. Just professors, at the moment, professors, who only want students, and not fighters, will really agree. X-Shu took a deep breath, but did not reply. Howard looked at Professor X and continued, of course, Professor Charles, it all depends on what you mean. In any case, I will still invest in your school for free. After all, in my opinion, you are a pure land and holy place for mutant people, and I don't want to see it found by some trouble one day. Quote. Don't worry, I'll make them feel sorry if trouble comes to you. Suddenly, X-Shu laughed, his eyes flashing, and as for whether or not to make the children warriors, in fact, this is not my final say, after all, it depends on the children's own wishes. How about this, Mr. Howard, and I'll introduce you to a child. Maybe you'll like it. Quote. Oh, Howard's gaze moved. When Hank heard this, he glanced at X unexpectedly, especially when he heard about the introduction of a child. He couldn't help but have a strange smile on his face. Well, if it was that kid, he would be very interested in what Howard just said. Mutant School Base. Inside the training room, Yu Feng's whole person turned into a black light and quickly ran on the wraparound spherical metal wall. Moving in the state of this black light particle made Yu Feng's speed slow down a lot, but it gave him the feeling of weight-bearing practice. Nice, weight-bearing exercises. The black light particles are extremely thick. Running in that state, it is equivalent to ordinary people running with several iron bags tied to their feet, but they can greatly exercise themselves. Qin used the power of his own mind below to constantly interfere with Yu Feng, helping Yu Feng train while constantly training himself. But at this moment, wow, the door to the training room opened. Jean was stunned. Turn your head and look. I saw X, Hank, and walked in with Howard and Jarvis. Oh, as soon as Howard and Jarvis entered, they noticed the surrounding metal walls and a strange black light that kept flashing on them. For this base, Howard himself is already amazed. He didn't expect that there was such a high-tech facility inside the mutant school. These facilities seemed to be comparable to the research room of his Stark Industrial headquarters. Especially when he knew that all this was done by Hank, he couldn't help but give Hank a thumbs up, and even had the idea of inviting Hank to Stark Industries. This is an absolute talent. Hank is honest, but also very curious about the various technologies in Stark Industry, especially many of Howard's ideas coincide with him, and his impression of Howard is getting better and better, so the two agreed to visit Stark Industries for a while. Of course, what Howard was most curious about was the child that Professor X wanted to introduce to him. It's just that what makes him wonder is that what Professor X just said on the road seems to be a boy. Why is there a little girl in front of him? Howard's gaze swirled a few times with the strange black light, and finally landed on Jean's body. Jean blinked. Professor, Mr. Hank, she said, why are you here? Quote. Shu smiled slightly. Qin, let's find you, hey. Quote. X said, and couldn't help but be stunned. The gaze looked at the strange black light. He didn't pay much attention just now. His eyes carefully glanced at the black light at this moment, but he felt a hint of familiarity in the black light, and couldn't help but wonder, Qin, that black light, is it a feather? Quote. Aha. Jean nodded his little head. Professor X and Hank were amazed. That black light, is it really a feather? When you was training on weekdays, wasn't the light that usually turned into golden, why did it turn black now? Could it be that something is wrong? Wow. Just thinking a little strangely in his heart, suddenly the black light flashed, followed by a golden light, and appeared in front of X Shu and the others in the blink of an eye. Yu Feng looked at X, Hank, and Howard Jarvis, and couldn't help but feel a little strange in his heart. Professor, are you looking for me? He asked. Yes, you. Professor X looked puzzled. What is that black light you just turned into? Quote. Oh, my new ability in elemental form. Yu Feng smiled slightly. In my opinion, the talent that every mutant possesses is not innate. They can develop new potentials through continuous training, and that black light is the new potential that I have developed for myself. Quote. Yu Feng bragged indiscriminately, but whenever it comes to his abilities, Yu Feng must be bragging. Otherwise, he can't always say to others, hey, I have a magical data-based genetic interdimensional space, with the ability of shining fruits that can be infinitely strengthened. That would be considered a neuropathy. Oh, Howard was already very surprised by the feather maple who suddenly appeared in front of him. At this moment, hearing what Yu Feng said blindly just now, his eyes immediately brightened, and he nodded and praised. That's absolutely right. Although I am not a mutant, I believe that the potential of mutants is not fixed, and that new potentials can be developed through continuous training stimulation. In fact, the same is true for ordinary people. Our genes contain infinite mysteries, and both ordinary people and mutants can develop infinite potential. Quote. Saying that, he couldn't help but look at X. Professor Charles, this is the child you want to introduce to me, right? Well, very nice, I love this kid. Quote. Forehead. Yu Feng couldn't help but listen to the clouds. At this moment, the telepathic voice of the piano came. I just checked the memory of that Howard Stark. It seems that he wants to fund the professor to build a mutant school for free, but at the same time hopes that the professor can establish an ex-police team to cooperate strategically with his SSR, the Strategic Science Corps. Well, it's very similar to Mr. Hank's philosophy. Quote, but the only difference is that Howard Stark hopes to train mutant warriors in the direction of agents. It's not just about staying in school. Quote, of course, everything depends on the wishes of our Professor Charles. This Howard is quite good, quite open-minded. As the leader of Stark Industries, mastering all kinds of high technology, it is easy to shield telepathy. Did not expect that he did not do any shielding measures. Quote, finally, Jean also commented, facing telepathics without doing anything to shield secrecy proves the sincerity of a collaborator. Yu Feng nodded secretly. He understood what kind of person Howard was. Of course, he knew, naturally there was no idea of murdering the mutant school. And X instruction, although he does not want to establish X police for the time being, but with the current tacit behavior of Hank training him and Jean, I am afraid that it is also a situation in case it will be done later. He and Jean are the seeds of the X-Men's future preparations. So right now, it was clear that Professor X had come to inquire about his wishes, to see if he would like to become this warrior and go to Stark's side for a study exchange. To this, Yu Feng is naturally extremely, very, and willing. What a great opportunity. Needless to say, the cosmic cube, that is, the space gem, must be on the SSR side to which Howard belongs right now. And in addition to space gems, there may be other, mysterious substances on Stark Industries' side. Yu Feng originally planned to go to Stark's side, and now that he has this opportunity, of course, he will not miss it. Sure enough, soon X asked about his wishes. Mr. Stark has an internship program over there. Hank will go there these days to cooperate and exchange, and discuss some cooperation with Mr. Stark. Are you also willing to learn and communicate? I want to remind you that this learning exchange also includes training programs, which is equivalent to a strategic cooperation between me and Mr. Stark to cultivate you into a special strategic talent. For specific details, I will ask Hank to sort out some information for you. Quote, of course, it depends on your wishes, if you want to stay in school for the time being. Professor, what am I, don't you understand? Before he finished speaking, suddenly Yu Feng said with a smile, I'm afraid that if you come to me, I know that I will definitely agree. Quote, X-san couldn't help but look at Yu Feng with some helplessness. Well, I do know that you will definitely be interested in this. It's just that this time it's not in school, and the gentle guidance and training that Hank gave you will become much harsher when it comes to Mr. Stark. Quote, SSR organizations, how could X not know it all? In fact, he is only in his 30s right now. He is not an old stubborn, where there is really no need to telepathically check your situation. As early as the first meeting with Howard, he had already figured out the details of Howard. He knew that SSR was specialized in training agents. It was the original Nazi secret service, Hydra's mortal enemy, and it was much harsher and dangerous over there than in the mutant school. Oh, is it? Quote, unexpectedly, Yu Feng showed a more interested look. Then I must give it a try. Quote, Shu couldn't help but smile bitterly again. All right. He knew that would be the case. Howard was amazed, and he said, I'm Howard Stark, and I want to ask you a question. If you come to my side for internship training, I don't know which field you want to get involved in. I heard that you are Hank's top student, a little prodigy, with a deep understanding and attainment in invention and genetic research. Quote, Yu Feng smiled slightly. I don't know what areas Mr. Stark has over there that can allow me to conduct internship training. Quote, I've studied a lot of fields. The field of biotechnology marked by genetic engineering. The field of information technology marked by optoelectric technology and artificial intelligence. The field of new material technology marked by superconducting materials and synthetic design new materials. There is also the field of new energy marked by nuclear energy and solar energy technology. In addition, there are space technology, deep-sea development technology and so on. Quote, Howard laughed. Of course, in addition to these accidents, we are also involved in the field of supernatural events, military warfare, intelligence gathering and so on. Quote. So, when Yu Feng heard this, his eyes rolled and he looked interested. Then I will get involved in all these fields. Quote. Oh, well, quote. Howard's words froze. What? Hank and Jean heard this on the side, and they couldn't help but show the look of, I knew it would be this kind of answer, on their faces. Howard and Jarvis both looked strange. Especially seeing the unsurprising look on X's face, I couldn't help but look even more strange. You want to get involved in a field of research? Howard asked again uncertainly. Good. Yu Feng nodded, with an indifferent expression on his small face. Howard looked at Yu Feng's indifferent look, as if he didn't look like a child, and finally said with a strange face, well, since you took the initiative to ask to learn everything, don't regret it then. Quote. Of course I won't regret it, Yu Kaide said. Howard couldn't help but smile a little bitterly in his heart. Naturally, he thought it was just a manifestation of the conceit of a genius prodigy. But anyway, this mutant kid is indeed very good, and Howard is very satisfied. And more importantly, Professor X clearly shows the attitude of strategic cooperation, which is the best news for him. After visiting the school again, Howard and Jarvis all left the school. After everything is ready in a few days, he will come to the school again and take Yu Feng to Stark Industries. Time flies quickly. 3 days flew by. During this time, Nightcrawler meets Professor X and officially becomes a student at Xavier's Gifted Youth School. Yu Feng trained his black light particle ability as always. The most trained, in addition to the movement speed training in the state of black light, is to plasticize the black light particles, and combine with the Black Phoenix armed color domineering, and evolve into a black knife-like weapon like the Heavenly Lock and Moon and the God of Death. Compared to the Tiankong Cloud Sword, this black knife-like weapon form has an essential improvement in attack power, defense power, and functionality. Especially the high-power move released with the whole knife, which is similar to the crescent moon rushing into the sky, seems to have become one of Yu Feng's most powerful moves now. Light is to transform my light particles into black light form. It has such power, that mysterious space-time dimension, the mysterious material energy in it, if absorbed, will definitely make my shining fruit ability get a huge boost, right? Yu Feng couldn't help but think of that scene again. Today is the day when Howard comes to pick him up to Stark Industries, and the reason why it was chosen today is because Hank is almost busy with everything, but he made an appointment with Howard to visit Stark Industries, so the time has been delayed until now. Right now, Yu Feng was sitting in Howard's luxury car, thinking about the problem, when suddenly the car stopped. Yu Feng looked over. I saw an extremely tall building appear in front of me. Although this building is not as tall and full of technology as the future Stark building, it is also very good in the current 70s. Walk in with Hank, and in front of them is Howard, who takes them to the Secret Research Institute in the Stark Industrial Headquarters, introducing them to some of the black technology and advanced research projects in the Stark building. I have to say that the Secret Research Institute in this building is really hidden deep enough. Yu Feng was slightly exclaimed and surprised in his heart. But at this moment, as Howard opened a metal door that had obviously undergone various encryption shielding treatments while introducing, suddenly flashed the long-lost voice from his mind. Sensing multiple mysterious substances. Yu Feng was shocked in his heart, and at the same time he was extremely surprised. Sensing multiple mysterious substances. He originally guessed that there should be mysterious substances in the depths of Stark Industries. After all, Howard Stark is no better than Hank. Howard's path is extremely broad. As a core member of SSR, one of the founders of S.H.I.E.L.D. in the future, and a top rich man, he can naturally get all kinds of magical things to study. It is even possible to develop some special substances. However, Yu Feng did not expect that he had just entered the depths of the core of this Stark industry, and the Flash sensed multiple mysterious substance reactions. That's a lot. There must be at least 2 mysterious substances in the depths of the core of Stark Industries, right? Stark Industries, I'm really coming to the right place. Yu Feng couldn't help but secretly rejoice in his heart. Of course, he couldn't rush to absorb the mysterious substance sensed by the Flash right now. Because according to the Flash, although the induction exists, it is not strong, and it should be enclosed in a special place. Yu Feng had to figure out where these mysterious substances were sealed before he could act. Of course, although it is impossible to absorb those sensed mysterious substances in the first time, They are so far away and in a closed state, but they can still be sensed by flashes, which is enough to prove that the multiple mysterious substances sensed by flashes are not simple existences. Once absorbed, the evolution effect on the ability of the shining fruit he possesses should be very large. Well, is this the individual integrated weapons and equipment research and development project that Mr. Stark you developed? Hank was discussing with Howard enthusiastically. It's incredible. Quote, actually, in school, I have always wanted to develop special weapons for future ex-policemen, and since mutants each have their own special abilities, they have the possibility of individual combat in many situations. So the research and development of individual integrated weapons and equipment, I have been researching. I did not expect that Mr. Stark, your side, has been developed to such a mature stage. This design concept is so novel. Do you actually want to design an armor device that covers the human body? Quote. Suddenly Hank seemed to see something new, and his eyes lit up. Howard laughed. Actually, Mr. Hank, I don't want to hide from you. This one-man integrated weapon and equipment research and development, as well as this armor concept, was conceived by my son Tony. That kid was 4 years old and tinkered with the integrated circuit board by himself, and a few days ago he also made his own power device, and he wanted to make himself a set of super future armor. Quote. Oh, Mr. Stark, is this the concept that your son proposed? Quote. Hank was surprised. To be able to build his own power unit, he should already be a graduate student in engineering, right? Quote. Hearing this, Howard's face couldn't help but look strange, and he immediately smiled. The birthday is almost 7 years old. Quote. Forehead. Quote. Hank froze. I will be 7 years old after my birthday this year. Isn't that just 6 years old? This. At the age of 4, he can tinker with integrated circuit boards. At the age of 6, he can create his own power unit, and he also proposed and designed a set of individual integrated armored weapons concept preview. Genius. Yu Kaide was thinking about the mysterious substance. Suddenly hearing the conversation between Hank and Howard, especially hearing Howard talk about his son, Tony, he immediately turned his eyes. Hey, did that Howard guy give birth to Tony Stark right now? And 6 years old. This made Yufeng couldn't help but feel a little interesting. 6 years old, compared with the age of 8 or 9 years old at the moment, it seems that there is not much difference. Accustomed to Tony's classic beard image in film and television comics, Yufeng was a little curious about Tony, who was only 6 years old now. Was about to ask Howard something about Tony's goods, but saw Howard suddenly frown and looked in one direction. Maria, why are you here? I saw a noblewoman-like woman walking over there. The woman is Howard's wife, Maria, and Tony's biological mother. At this moment, she seemed to be anxious, and when she saw Howard, she couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief, but she hurriedly said, Howard, oops, Tony's kid is secretly running away again. You go and help me find him. Quote. When Hank heard this, he looked at Howard and said, Mr. Stark, if it's not convenient. It's okay. But seeing Howard's calm appearance, he smiled and said, Tony's kid is very curious. Since I brought here to visit once, he often likes to sneak here to mess with some messy things, and even stole my identity card. What a bad boy. I think he should be somewhere in my lab by now, and he found it quickly after opening a surveillance. Quote. He said, looking at a researcher. The researcher nodded and brought up the monitoring equipment everywhere. Howard, his wife Maria, and Hank, and Yu Kaide all looked towards the surveillance. I saw that in one of the monitors, there was a little furry boy tiptoeing. Seeing a researcher walking around the corner, he quickly ran towards an unmanned laboratory, holding an identity card in his hand, and quickly entered the laboratory with a drop. Seeing this, Yufeng looked interested. This 6-year-old furry boy Tony is really skinny. He actually likes to sneak into his father's secret laboratory. Well, Mr. Stark, is this really good? Hank couldn't help but have some doubts. Although little Tony is a genius child, you can't enter that kind of laboratory casually, right? In case of any danger, it would not be good. Quote. Don't worry, Mr. Hank. Howard was still calm, and at the same time looked at his wife Maria and smiled. Last time I noticed that Tony kid took my identity card, I secretly replaced the research project in that lab. All dangerous research projects were withdrawn, leaving only a few things that would help Tony with self-directed learning, and nothing dangerous would happen. Howard said, looking at the researcher. The researcher immediately called up the monitoring scene inside the lab. I saw that Tony's hairy boy was happily tinkering with a semi-automatic mechanical device, playing for a while and seemed to be somewhat interested, and then going to get computer software, then working on integrated circuit layout, and debugging a small power device, constantly writing and drawing on the blackboard in the laboratory. The whole laboratory looks like a toy place. Toy place for Tony, of course. If other children, when they see these things, they will definitely either fall or kick. Where will they research and manufacture integrated circuit boards, power units, software debugging and other things as toys, for play? When Hank saw this scene, he immediately sighed. I couldn't help but say to Yufeng, I seem to have seen what you looked like a year ago. Quote, quote. Yufeng couldn't help but glance at Hank speechlessly. Hey, was I as stupid as this furry kid a year ago? Seeing this, Howard's wife Maria was immediately relieved, and she was afraid that Tony would sneak into some dangerous laboratory. Now that she saw that Howard had already made arrangements, she was relieved. Mr. Hank, if you don't mind, let's continue with the visit just now. Howard said with a smile, while looking at his wife Maria. As for Maria, I'll bring Tony's kid back when I'm done in a while. Don't worry, although Tony is small, he has his own sense of proportion. Quote, well, good. Maria nodded and looked at Tony in the surveillance again before leaving. In the lab, Tony was tinkering with something in front of a computer. Suddenly, his eyes lit up, he pressed the enter key, and immediately saw a piece of code flowing on the computer screen. At the same time, the surveillance screen on Howard's side flashed. The researcher who looked at the monitoring screen chuckled when he saw this, couldn't help but take a few closer looks, and then called up the background monitoring time data to check it several times, and found that there was no problem, so he was relieved. But I didn't find that the picture that belonged to Tony in the surveillance, it seems to be a continuous cycle in a certain period of time. Very good. Seeing that he had successfully regulated and monitored, he couldn't help but show a little proud. Stinky Dad, want to spy on your son and me? No way. Don't you feel that you have removed some of my research projects that interest me? I actually left some simple and boring things that I had already underestimated. Quote. After muttering a few words, Tony pulled up a copy of the experimental project evacuation log and looked over. Suddenly, my gaze stopped at the title of a journal called Zero Matter Analysis Survey Report and Sample Fragmentation Extraction Study. Tony's eyes couldn't help but light up. I was originally very interested in Dr. Hank Pym's PIM particles, and I even stole a copy of PIM particles to see if my father has any PIM particle research formulas left here, and study them well. But this zero substance, it seems to be very interesting. Quote. Click on the log and look over. And the more he looked, Tony's gaze couldn't help but brighten. If Howard knew that Tony was actually interested in the PIM particle and looked like he wanted to study it, he would definitely cry and laugh. Everything about the PIM particle, especially the PIM particle formula, is the old life of Hank Pym. That guy was not only hot-tempered, but also extremely petty, and would not tell them anything about the PIM particles, let alone conduct research, and even Howard himself knew nothing about the PIM particles. But Tony not only wanted to study, but also stole a copy of the PIM particle. The devil knows how this kid did it, and if Dr. Pym's old guy knew, he would have to make a mess of Stark Industries. And as for zero matter, if Howard knew that Tony wanted to study the PIM particle, he might just laugh and cry. But if you know that Tony is actually interested in zero matter, you will definitely start to panic. Because zero matter, that's an extremely dangerous special substance. Oh, interesting. Tony's eyes shone after reading the log. I didn't expect that when my father was young, he actually encountered such a magical thing. Quote. Zero matter, it can allow people to have abilities similar to immortal bodies, while mastering extremely unusual energy that devours people. Quote. Well, it doesn't seem right to say that devouring, according to the research of Dad and that guy, it seems that zero matter will open a special, zero matter crack, and communicate to another mysterious dimensional space, saying that it is devouring, but it is actually sucked into that dimensional space as if. The more Tony thought about it, the more interested he became. The source of this zero substance comes from nuclear explosion experiments. In other words, violent nuclear fission reactions can have a chance to produce this substance. When Howard was still young, He used a machine to open the zero matter crack, and almost all the zero matter was sucked into it, and it no longer existed on Earth. But Howard was careful to think about it. A small fragment of zero matter was secretly sealed for research. Let me see where Dad put that fragment of matter, Tony kept searching. Finally, a smile appeared at the corner of his mouth, and when he found it, he quickly got up and began to sneak towards the place where the zero substance was sealed. And at this moment, Yufeng is communicating with the Flash. Flash, can you sense the specific location information of those mysterious substances now? The image of the Flash turned into a piano appeared beside him, saying, although it is still a little weak, when I get to this place, I can already slightly perceive the specific direction, hey. Quote. Suddenly Flash chuckled. What's wrong? Yufeng asked. It's like, there are two mysterious substances, close to each other, Flash said. What? Yufeng was shocked in his heart. Two mysterious substances are approaching, doesn't that mean that one of them is being carried? Who is actually carrying a mysterious substance on him? And actually went towards another mysterious substance. This look, no matter how it looks like the man came specifically to acquire something that exists in Stark Industries. And that something happened to be the mysterious substance that Yufeng needed. Interesting. Yufeng's eyes narrowed slightly, and he secretly said in his heart, if it wasn't some experimental researcher who specifically wanted to obtain those different, mysterious substances, for research, someone had sneaked into Stark Industries and specifically came to steal something. Quote. Being qualified to become a mysterious substance, recognized by Flash is naturally not an ordinary thing, and it is not surprising that it can be targeted. It's just that the man can actually sneak into the interior of Stark Industries, but he has some skills. I sensed a mysterious substance approaching again. Just then, the sound of flashes sounded in my ears again. Yufeng was stunned when he heard this. Immediately, I couldn't help but look strange. What the heck? When did the mysterious substance he needed actually appear everywhere like a cabbage? He hadn't seen a few for a whole year, so why did he run to Stark Industries right now, one after another? Moreover, it is actually approaching. It's a mysterious substance that moves. Just as he was surprised, he suddenly saw Hank's nose move, who was discussing with Howard enthusiastically. The next moment, a trace of cold light suddenly flashed in his eyes, and the whole person subconsciously changed into a blue beast form. This scene startled Howard. Yufeng was also surprised. But what really widens people's eyes is still in the next scene. Hank, who saw the state of the beast, suddenly waved his hand, and with a subtle sound of bang, he saw a small strange figure like an ant in the air suddenly flew out upside down. Between the upside down, the ant-like figure suddenly became larger, and by the time it fell on the ground, it had become an adult size. The sound of pawn knocked down several precision instruments, all of which were upside down, and one or two damaged ones continued to emit a nuisance of electricity. Before he had time to be surprised by Hank's changes, seeing this scene, Howard's brows immediately furrowed deeply. Drive. Pym, didn't you go out on a mission? How did the Experimental Research Institute come inside? Moreover, still in this sneaky state. Quote. HMPH. The man was dressed in a strange suit and had a strange helmet on his head that resembled an ant's head. At this moment, he took off his helmet, revealing a face full of anger, and snorted coldly, Stark, you still mean to talk about me? You think of me as an errand runner, just go out to do tasks, and now you actually want to steal my experimental results. I'm here to get back what belongs to me. Quote. And, saying that, he looked at Hank, who looked like a blue fur at the moment, where are you a monster? Quote. Dr. Pym, this is my invited friend, Mr. Hank. He was a mutant with a keen sense of nervous reactions, and it was clear that your smaller, sneaky appearance just now aroused my friend's vigilance. Quote. Howard's face is also not good looking, especially in sneaky, to add emphasis. Also, Dr. Pym, I am serious about my reputation here, and I have not stolen any of your experiments. Although I am interested in your Pym particle and think it should be carried forward, I will talk with you about cooperation, not choose to steal it. Quote. Listening to the words between Howard and the sudden appearance of Dr. Pym, Hank couldn't help but be a little confused at this moment. He had indeed sensed some danger just now, so he subconsciously made the move just now. Only to find out what he just hit, it's actually a personal. And it was from his eyes that suddenly grew from small to big, as if appearing out of thin air. This surprised him. What kind of magical black technology is this? It seems that it can actually make a person look the size of an ant. It's just so much fun. Yu Feng's gaze moved slightly, and his face was surprised. Looking at the sudden appearance of Dr. Pym in front of him, or the first generation of Ant-Man, he knew in his heart. It seems that the mysterious substance that Flash just said is approaching should be the Pym particle in this Ant-Man suit. Sure enough, the Pym particle is indeed a mysterious substance that can be absorbed by my database genes, thereby enhancing my ability to sparkle fruit. Yu Feng secretly said in his heart. And this original Ant-Man Dr. Pym is indeed as grumpy as stated in the original book. It was really bold enough to sneak directly into the interior of Stark Industries in the form of Ant-Man. Of course, it was also Dr. Pym who was too confident in his smaller self. As a beast, Hank is not only powerful, but also has extremely keen reaction nerves and crisis awareness. Dr. Pym, the original Ant-Man, rode flying ants around Hank, and the others couldn't notice it, but Hank, that wasn't necessarily. Hearing Howard's words, Dr. Pym couldn't help but frown deeply. He had known Howard for a long time and knew that Howard would not lie about such things. He couldn't believe that Howard would steal the results of his experiments. It's just that according to his secret tracking marks on each of his Pym particles, the stolen Pym particles are indeed in Howard's secret research institute. He originally wanted to get the Pym particle first, and then face it in front of Howard. But where did I think that I actually met a mutant with a strong sense of nervous reaction, and I couldn't help but sigh in my heart. But even so, he won't leave it at that. Snorting coldly again, Dr. Pym held a signal tracker in front of Howard and said coldly, "Howard, you said you didn't steal my experiments, but why did my signal tracking show me a copy of my Pym particles in the depths of your secret laboratory inside Stark Industries?" Howard looked over with a frown. The signal on the signal tracker did show that it was deep inside his lab. And, well, suddenly, Howard's face changed. He was all too familiar with the structure deep inside his lab. Although there was no architectural markup on the signal tracker, only the relative position of Dr. Pym to the missing Pym particle. But judging from this relative position, and the movement of this tracking signal, Howard can still recognize this signal. It should be heading towards the zero matter fragment he had sealed. And for some reason, the other party actually went all the way unimpeded, and any identity certificate blockade was actually solved in seconds. This scene made Howard's brows immediately wrinkle into a chew-on character. Suddenly, as if remembering something, Howard's eyes flashed. Could it be? Yu Kaide looked towards the signal on the signal tracker. At this glance, a look of interest immediately appeared on his face. Interesting, the direction tracked by this signal seems to be consistent with the orientation sensed by the Flash. Yu Feng secretly said in his heart, could it be that the mysterious substance sensed by the Flash in that direction is also a Pym particle? Or more accurately, the guy who stole the Pym particles. Quote. Anyway, no matter what happened, Dr. Pym's signal tracker provided Yu Kaide with the last directional confirmation information. After confirming the final specific location of the two mysterious substances, the corners of Yu Feng's mouth turned up. Then there was no hesitation. The figure moved, entered the state of moving at the speed of light, and disappeared in the blink of an eye. At this moment, deep inside the laboratory. It's basically a place that only Howard Stark is eligible to enter. In normal times, this side is basically closed, and no one comes in. But at this time, wow, with the opening of a metal door, a small figure came to a slightly dim room. And as the figure entered, suddenly the whole room seemed to be able to automatically sense, and there were actually several azure lights in succession, illuminating the whole room extremely brightly, giving people a sense of advanced technology that seemed to have come to the future world. Oh, interesting. Tony looked around with interest. I didn't expect that my father actually hid such a fun place, and I will build a super laboratory full of science and technology in the future. Quote. But it can't be so empty. It's going to be full of all kinds of machines of built, artificial intelligence, and some limited edition sports cars here. Oh, I love sports cars. It's a pity that I'm too young to drive now. Quote. While muttering, he came to a place that seemed to be where things were stored. Zero matter, it should be here. Tony is very smart. His genius lies not in the knowledge that no one can grasp at his young age, but also in his extremely fast learning ability and the speed of brain teasers. At the moment, the place where the things are stored is said to be a huge metal protection box. And the way of blocking is no longer iris, fingerprints, identity cards and other things that he has prepared for a long time, but the oldest password method. I don't know the password, I can't open it at all. However, Tony rolled his eyes, experimented several times, and suddenly his eyes lit up. Duh, it's open. Gee, this stinky dad is really cunning enough. The password does not use his birthday, nor my and my mother's birthday, but it actually used the time when I first made an integrated circuit board when I was 4 years old. Tony said secretly smugly, if it weren't for me, others would probably have been blind. Quote. The little hand reached out and grabbed it. Feeling something enter his hand, he immediately looked slightly happy and took it out. I saw that it was a clear glass bottle. And in the glass bottle, there is a very strange, constantly violently stretched and contracted black substance. Huh, Tony looked surprised when he saw this, as this zero substance. Quote. Zero matter, if not loaded in a glass bottle, once leaked, it will absorb all the energy matter around it. Tony recalled the information about zero matter recorded in the log. The original record of zero matter was a large area. Right now it's just a small piece, the size of a thumb. However, as a fluid special substance that can be stretched at will, there is not much difference and influence in size. Although Tony has great curiosity, he is very measured, and he is not stupid enough to release this zero substance directly from the bottle. Curious to look at the zero substance a few more times, Tony took out another test tube from his body. The test tube contains a bizarre reddish substance. This is the Pym particle that he stole from Dr. Pym while Dr. Pym was away. Putting these two substances together, Tony looked at the two things with wide eyes and curiosity, constantly thinking. The Pym particle can change the distance between atoms and shrink any object. And this zero matter can absorb and devour any material energy. Quote. I don't know what the specific particle composition of this zero matter is, or atoms. If you use Pym particles to act on this zero matter, I wonder what will happen. Quote. The more Tony thought about it, the more curious he became. He really wanted to do such an experiment. However, at the moment, this place is obviously not suitable for this kind of experiment, and he enters here. It is estimated that he will soon be discovered by Howard, so Tony thought about it and decided to put the zero matter back first, and then find an opportunity to study it later. Anyway, he already knew the direction and saw zero matter. While it has not yet been discovered, leave first, think of a way to extract some of the zero matter for research, be prepared, and never come back later. Thinking of this, Tony was ready to put the zero matter back first. However, at this moment, an extremely angry voice suddenly sounded around him. Tony, you stinky boy, you dare to steal my Pym particle. Ha, Tony was taken aback. I saw that in front of this room, the originally dark screen lit up, and then several figures appeared in it. It's Howard's scene. I saw a guy jumping in anger next to Howard. He pointed at Tony with wide eyes, and almost ran straight out of the screen. Tony, you smelly boy, I can't spare you. Oops, it's Dr. Pym's grumpy weird guy. How did he come over here and find me? Quote. Tony was immediately startled, followed by the sweat, and his heart raced about how to explain. But at this moment, bang, Tony was startled in his heart and turned his head to look. I saw that the transparent glass bottle containing zero matter was suddenly tripped by his retreating steps and fell to the ground. There's also the tube with the Pym particles. And then, I saw cracks appear on the glass of the two, black zero matter and red Pym particles, leaked out of it, and fused together. Seeing this, Tony Den's whole person gasped. The black zero substance is a fluid-like substance that changes in size with the container. Placed in a palm-sized bottle is the size of a palm. At this moment, it leaked out all of a sudden, suddenly stretched wildly, fluctuated sharply, and the surrounding air heat was all absorbed. The red Pym particle had just leaked a trace and fused with zero matter, and the next moment it was all swallowed in, leaving nothing behind. The zero matter in the entire laboratory suddenly soared, even the light was distorted, and even those lights crackled and crackled, causing the light to be completely extinguished, and the scene of the entire laboratory became extremely terrifying at this moment. Oops! Feeling that the air around him was getting colder and colder, as well as the dim and terrifying, and a strange suction force constantly wrapped around his body, Tony's whole person froze in place, and his head was blank for a moment. He is only 6 or 7 years old, where has he seen this kind of scene? Immediately, the little face was frightened and pale, completely stunned. When Howard and the others saw this situation on the large hanging screen on that side, their faces immediately changed. Not good. It's zero matter leaked. Quote, Howard glared angrily and glared sharply at Dr. Pym on the side. If it hadn't been for Dr. Pym's sudden growl, startling Tony, where would this have happened? Although it is not right for Tony to steal Pym particles, Pym, this guy is really too hot-tempered, even they can't stand it, not to mention Tony, a 6 or 7-year-old little furry child. Dr. Pym on the side felt Howard's anger, although he still muttered, but he was also worried when he saw Tony's danger. Grumpy temper is his usual problem, and he can't control himself. He had never seen the power of zero matter with Howard, nor had he ever seen zero matter. But the current situation on the screen made him instantly realize the power of the substance, especially the Pym particles that swallowed him, and the devil knows what will happen. Immediately, Pym did not hesitate at all, and he turned into an Ant-Man state and went to Tony's side. But it's too late. Nope, Tony. Quote, in Howard's desperate roar, Tony on the screen was suddenly shrouded in black. The next moment, wow, calm returned to the laboratory. It's just that everything is gone, except for a huge black irregular hole in the ground, everything is gone. The moment everything was swallowed by black just now, everyone did not notice that a strange light flashed on the screen. That strange light was naturally Yufeng. When he came to Tony's side, he saw the moment when the black zero fused with the Pym particle and rose wildly. What the heck? Quote, in the field of view of Yufeng's light speed moving state, everything naturally seemed to be static. But the violent fluctuations and crazy surge of zero matter are not motionless, but still moving at a speed visible to the naked eye. In the field of view of the speed of light moving state, this thing is still fluctuating wildly, which shows how fast its fluctuations increase in the normal time flow rate state. Especially this thing actually has an extremely strange suction power. As soon as Yufeng arrived here, he felt the energy of the light particles on his body, and suddenly had a tendency to fluctuate chaotically. Seeing this scene, Yufeng couldn't help but be surprised. This thing, is it the mysterious substance that is close to the Pym particle? Hiss, it seems a little familiar. Looking at the fluid-like black substance that fluctuated violently, Yufeng's eyes flashed, as if he had thought of something. By the way, isn't this thing the zero matter that appears inside Agent Carter? I didn't expect that there was still zero matter hidden on Howard's side. Interesting, I thought it didn't exist on Earth at all. Zero matter was something that Yufeng had naturally thought of in a year. However, thinking that the zero substance in the original plot seems to have been all sucked into the zero matter crack by the machine built by Howard, and no longer exists, he gave up the idea of this object. I didn't expect to see it on Howard's side today. It seems that when Howard first built the machine, he left some small means. And, if he was not mistaken, this zero matter seems to have sucked out the Pym particles. This made Yufeng feel a little sore and speechless. Glancing at Tony, the little furry boy standing still on the side, Yufeng understood what all this was all about. Sure enough, the creature of the bear child is specially used to cause damage and produce all kinds of accidents. Zero matter seems to be a dark magical substance from the dark dimension of Dormammu. Although it swallowed the Pym particle, one is magic, the other is technology, and the two should not be fused. But the Pym particle has been swallowed into zero matter, and I wonder if it will affect my absorption. Yufeng shook his head helplessly in his heart, and was about to ask how Flash would absorb the two mysterious substances of zero matter and Pym particles next. But at this moment, the Flash turned into the appearance of a piano, appeared next to Yufeng, frowned and said, "You, sensing a fusion special mysterious substance, if you want to absorb it, it will have an uncontrollable influence factor on your ability." What? Yufeng was slightly startled. Fusion mysterious substance. Those two mysterious substances really merged. Quote. Flash nodded. In addition to the solid form, void form, and parasitic form, the mysterious substance also has a special fusion form. However, in general, fusion between mysterious substances rarely occurs, so mysterious substances in fusion form are rare. Quote. Once this mysterious substance is absorbed, there will be some uncontrollable factors that will make your abilities not develop as you expect. Is that so? There were some black lines on Yu Feng's forehead, and there were rarely fusion phenomena, but he let him touch it once. I don't know if it's good luck or bad luck. He thought for a moment and said, then, will it have any side effects on me after absorption? Quote. Side effects don't. Flash said, it's just that there may be some relatively normal evolution, which will seem to be a bit chicken ribs of ability growth. As a result, the mysterious material effect that originally had great potential was completely abolished. And you will no longer be able to absorb the two mysterious substances before the fusion. Quote. So it is. When Yu Feng heard this, he was slightly relieved. It's a gamble. Whether it is zero matter or PIM particles, absorption alone will definitely have a great evolutionary effect. However, the fusion of the two, although there will be no side effects after absorption, but it is likely to make the huge evolutionary potential of the two completely wasted, and the result is useless. Of course, since it is an uncontrollable evolutionary factor, it may seem very chicken, but it may also have a very outstanding absorption effect. Yu Feng took a deep breath. And at this moment, there seems to be no choice. Zero matter and PIM particles, the two have merged. It's easy to give up and not try it. That's not the style of Yu Feng. So after a slight pause, Yu Feng decisively decided. Flash, absorb the mysterious substance of this fusion form. Good. The flash that turned into a piano nodded. Just contact your body with the energy of this substance and you can absorb it. Quote. Yu Feng stepped over and touched the zero matter that fused with the PIM particles. Hiss, what ice? Quote. Logically speaking, the photoparticleized feather maple cannot feel any touch. But right now, there is actually a feeling of extreme ice, and with the touch of the zero matter that fuses with the PIM particles, this feeling of extreme ice even swept through the whole body. It was as if the energy of the light particles in his body had all been swallowed up in an instant. But it feels like it comes and goes quickly. Soon, Yu Feng felt that all the light around him disappeared, and everything became dark. This scene made him very familiar. Suddenly, a flash of light flashed in my mind. This, wasn't it the other dimensional space-time that he entered into that suspected dark dimension when he had previously conducted an ability-feeding experiment with the Night Stalker? Now it has actually descended on this other dimensional space-time. Or more accurately, in the dark dimension. Zero matter itself is a substance in the dark dimension, perhaps, the mysterious matter I sensed in this other dimension space-time before may be other zero matter in the dark dimension. Yu Feng secretly guessed in his heart while looking around. Soon, the surroundings became completely dark, causing Yu Feng to completely enter the previous other dimensional space-time again. And the process of absorbing the mysterious substance is also over. Yu Feng felt it turns into a state of light particles. But it was a surprise to find that the light particles all over his body at this moment, it actually turned into a black light particle state. This scene made Yu Feng's eyes suddenly freeze. Sure enough. Now there was no doubt in his heart. When he and the Night Stalker ability fed each other before, the other dimensional space-time that made the light particles turn into black light particles really came from zero matter. From the special dimension where the demon god Dormammu exists, the dark dimension. So, after absorbing the matter after the fusion of zero matter and PIM particles, it gives me the ability to completely enter the dark dimension and turn light particles into black light particles, right? Yu Feng's eyes brightened slightly. Try to restore the light particles to their original state. Boom, the golden light lights up, and immediately the black disappears, and some light particles return to normal. The heart moved again. Suddenly, all the light particles turned into a black light state. This made Yu Feng couldn't help but nod. It seems that the state of this light particle can be continuously transformed according to his will. This made him very satisfied. Otherwise, if the state of light particles he turns into in the future can only be black light, it will be a little painful. After all, the speed in the state of black light particles is not as fast as that of ordinary light particles, and it is at least 10 times slower. It seems that this mysterious substance in the fusion form did not produce any very chicken effect after absorption. It's a good thing to let me enter the dark dimension, and to allow my light particles to evolve into a black light particle state at will. Especially Yu Feng felt it. As the light particles turn into a black light state, they seem to have a unique absorption ability. It can continuously absorb and devour various free energy around it, and has the same properties as zero matter. This, I have to say, was a surprise. It's just that the only thing that makes Yu Feng a little puzzled is, although the mysterious substance formed by the fusion of this zero matter and the PIM particle did not have any evolutionary effect on his shining fruit ability. However, at present, it seems that the evolutionary ability it has comes from zero matter. The effect of the PIM particles doesn't seem to be visible at all. This made Yu Feng feel a little strange. However, although it was a little strange, Yu Feng didn't think much. Maybe the effect of the PIM particles was too small, and they were all covered by zero matter. Whoosh! The whole body turns into a black light particle state again. Yu Feng controlled his black light particles, exerting the devouring and absorption effect of zero matter in them, and constantly absorbing all kinds of energy free in this dark dimension. Although this dark dimension is dark and terrifying, for Yu Feng, it is a good place for light particles to continuously absorb energy. Because as the light particles all over his body turned into a black light state, he faintly felt a sense of hunger. The feeling of hunger that wants to absorb a lot of energy. The more it absorbs, the more it can make each black light particle become extremely thick and powerful, until it reaches its limit. Moreover, under Yu Feng's feelings, although he descended into this dark dimension and different time and space at this moment, he had no way to get out for a while. Only by saturating the energy of his black light particles can he truly completely merge with this dark dimension space-time in the state of black light, and can come and go freely from now on. So the only thing Yu Feng had to do right now was to constantly absorb. So that the black light particles all over his body are absorbed to the point of saturation, so that it is truly done. Phew, the dark energy in the dark dimension, like the primordial fluid-like dark energy of zero matter, can be described as endless. And this time and space, at least from the current point of view, is almost endless, all dark. Therefore, Yu Feng didn't bother to think about whether he would encounter Dormammu's demon god level existence, and first saturated the black light particles. Phew, hey, quote. But suddenly, as soon as Yu Feng's eyes moved, he saw a small figure floating over from the darkness. Yu Feng made a move. Suddenly, the figure was sucked in by him, looked over, and then showed a hint of strangeness on his face. Because this figure is Tony Stark's little furry boy. I didn't expect that this guy Tony actually entered this dark dimension. Yu Feng looked at Tony, who was still a little far in front of him, and couldn't help but be a little funny. Call you skin, actually dare to steal PIM particles and zero matter, this time it is completely turned into a melon skin. But at this moment, suddenly Yu Feng's gaze froze. I saw that Tony suddenly floated out of several red test tubes. 1, 2, 3, there are almost 5 red test tubes, all of them are PIM particles. Yu Feng was stunned when he saw this, what the hell? Tony, this little melon skin, actually didn't just steal a copy of PIM particles. It's a full 6. But didn't Dr. Pym show only a signal of the stolen PIM particles? Just when Yu Feng was surprised and puzzled in his heart, suddenly, there were several clicks, and then those PIM particle test tube bottles all cracked. Among them, the PIM particles were affected by the fluctuations in the energy absorption of the black light particles around Yu Feng, and they all flew over quickly. Yu Feng was startled. The 5 fragmented and leaked PIM particles were directly attracted by the fluctuations in the energy absorption of his black light particles, and quickly flowed over. Because it was too close, when Yu Feng noticed it, a part of the PIM particles had been directly absorbed into his black light particles. Seeing this, Yu Feng's gaze froze sharply. Notice. His black light particles are like zero matter, specifically absorbing energy. But after all, the PIM particle is not an existence of an energy body, but a solid substance. However, right now, it was actually absorbed by his black light particles. This scene is so incredible, even a little weird. Yu Feng's brows furrowed deeply, unable to imagine what the principle was. Could it be because of the effect of the PIM particle? in the mysterious substance of the fusion form that he had just absorbed. Suddenly, a flash of light flashed in Yufeng's mind. At this moment, his black light particles underwent even more incredible changes than just now. As all 5 PIM particles merged into the black light particles on Yufeng's body fluctuated violently. And then, getting bigger and bigger. Expand, re-inflate. Until a grain originally in the form of particles, the light particles that are not visible to the naked eye completely expand to a size visible to the naked eye. Bowling the size of a bowling ball. The corners of Yufeng's mouth couldn't help twitching. What the heck? Think of a particle of light that was originally impossible to capture with the naked eye, and now becomes the size of a bowling ball. It feels weird no matter how you look at it. Soon the changes brought about by the PIM particle came to an end. Around Yufeng, there were 5 more black balls of light, hovering in front of Yufeng's eyes. Quote. Yufeng couldn't help but be a little speechless. He kind of saw it. The 5 parts of PIM particles directly enlarge the original 5 extremely tiny black light particles on his body. He knew that the PIM particle not only had the ability to make things smaller, but also had the ability to make things bigger, and it must have been the 5 parts of the PIM particle that leaked just now that made his black light particles bigger. Can PIM particles really act on light particles? Or is it because he absorbed the mysterious substance transformed by the fusion of the zero matter particles, and his light particles have undergone special mutations and can be affected by the PIM particles? It seems that the latter is more likely. After all, if the PIM particle can really act on such a thing as light particles, it is not scientific to think about it. Only by pushing everything to the uncontrollable evolutionary effect of the mysterious substance transformed by the fusion of zero matter and PIM particles that he had just absorbed could be regarded as a slightly reasonable explanation. But then again, it seems that the 5 black light particles that have become larger seem to be able to absorb many times more dark energy, and the devouring power has become stronger. And this means that the power it possesses will be more powerful, and it even looks like a seeking jade in the fire shadow. Yufeng couldn't help but secretly say in his heart. Of course, at first glance, it is still obvious that it is an energy form, which is not too different from the thick physical form of seeking Tao Jade. Thinking about it, Yufeng's eyes moved, and a black phoenix-armed color-domineering aura wrapped around. Immediately, the 5 black balls of light seemed to be poured with a layer of metallic black iron, and their appearance was almost 100% identical to the Tao-seeking jade in the Hokage. Very good. In the future, let's call this special gigantic black light particle, seeking jade black light particle. Yufeng thought with interest. The mind moved. These 5 jade-seeking black light particles were like arms commanding, and then circled behind Yufeng, and then to his feet. After turning around his whole body up and down, Yufeng reached out and grabbed it. Wow! Immediately, a jade-seeking black light particle twisted and elongated, and actually turned into a black knife in the form of a heavenly lock and a moon-slashing moon, and appeared in Yufeng's hand. One wave. Sting. A crack actually appeared in the space around Haoran, and countless black energy burst out of this crack, and finally formed a black crescent knife light energy, which flew out violently, and the power was so great that even Yufeng himself couldn't help but feel frightened. This, so strong. Quote. Looking at the knife in his hand that was transformed by the jade black light particles, Yufeng immediately looked surprised. The mind moves again. Another Tao-seeking jade black light particle twisted and turned into a black disc with an area of about 1 or 2 square meters. Yufeng sat down cross-legged, put Tony's little furry boy aside, took a deep breath, and thought thoughtfully. After the experiment just now, there is no doubt that after his black light particles were amplified by the PIM particles into a jade-like size form, combined with his black phoenix-armed color domineering, whether it is the energy that can be absorbed, the power it has, and the various functional uses have already produced qualitative changes. Compared with the ordinary time he attached the black phoenix-armed color domineering to the light particles, the effect was unknown how many times greater. And from this point of view, in the future, the PIM particle must become an indispensable substance for him. After all, his light particles, especially those in the form of black light, can only become larger if they are affected by the PIM particle. Moreover, more importantly, his jade black light particle could not exist forever as soon as it was produced. About 5 minutes from just now to now, there is a faint tendency to start disappearing. It is clear that there is a time limit. It seems that I have to find an opportunity to study the Pym particle thoroughly in the future. Yu Feng secretly said in his heart. If you want to form a black light particle in the form of seeking Dao Jade, you must first become larger, wrap around the black phoenix armed color domineering, absorb and devour the energy in this dark dimension to increase its power. There is no need to worry about the black phoenix armed color domineering. Yu Feng has cultivated extremely profoundly in 1 year. The energy in the dark dimension, with the ability of Yu Feng to move freely at the speed of light in this special other dimension, there is also no need to worry. As long as you don't steal too much dark energy at once and attract the attention of Dormam's demon god level guy. Next, the most critical thing is the Pym particle. This thing, Yu Feng must find a way to study it thoroughly, not to mention to invent and innovate, make new breakthroughs in the field of subatoms, at least be able to achieve the degree of self-manufacturing and self-sufficiency. Chapter 71. If you want to get the Pym particle formula, hard-dry will definitely not work. As the original Ant-Man, Dr. Pym is shocking, not only his ability to become the size of an ant, but also his stubborn temper that cannot even pull back a sky aircraft carrier. He would never tell anyone the formula for the Pym particle. So, there is only one way, and that is to steal. How to steal knowledge from a person's brain. The corners of Yu Feng's mouth turned up, and he instantly thought of an excellent idea. It's just that to implement this method of stealing the Pym particle formula, he can't rely on him. You have to ask the little niece of Jean. Ouch, my head hurts. At this moment, Tony's eyes suddenly opened. He rubbed his head, looked at the dark environment around him a little confused, and then I was confused. Where am I? Quote, Tony was at a loss, and soon noticed Yu Feng on the side. Although he didn't know who Yu Feng was, in this dark place, it was always more reassuring to meet someone. Especially Yu Feng also seems to be a child. Tony immediately approached Yu Feng's side and said, Hey buddy, can you tell me where this is? Yu Feng glanced at Tony's little melon skin, and a wistful smile curled at the corner of his mouth. If Chin was here, seeing Yu Feng's smile, he would definitely shake his head with a bitter smile. Because once Yu Feng showed this smile, it meant that there must be some bad idea in his heart. Can't you see what place it is here, Tony? Yu Feng said with a deliberately gloomy look. Tony immediately twitched his face. Of course, he is not stupid, on the contrary, he is very smart. Originally this gloomy place made him cold, and when he heard Yu Feng's words at this moment, his sweaty hairs immediately stood up. As this is good, as you think. Yu Feng continued to look gloomy. This is a place where only the dead come, and this is a gathering place for the souls of the dead. Tony, you're dead, and I am the extradited person who extradited your soul to hell. Quote. Tony heard this, his little face trembling and unable to speak. He's dead. He actually died, and also to be extradited to hell. Tony's heart was instantly desperate, and he regretted it immensely. He had nothing to do to get that Pym particle in zero matter. Even at this moment, tears flowed from his eyes. Unexpectedly, he was directly frightened and cried by Yu Feng's words. Yu Feng's stomach hurts when he laughs secretly on the side. Shalpy, this future Iron Man Tony Stark, actually has a time to cry. Interesting, so interesting. Holding back a laugh, Yu Feng immediately coughed, looking like an old god was present, of course. Tony, you're not completely dead. You were accidentally involved in an experiment, and you were influenced by some matter from another dimension of time and space, and your soul came to this side out of your body. If a mage with great magical attainments is here, he may be able to save your life. Quote. When Tony heard this, he immediately looked up at Yu Feng. This, really? Do I still have hope to live? Quote. He actually had a slight doubt about Yu Feng's words, but when he heard Yu Feng just say, experimental accident, and material influence in different dimensional space-time, he was already convinced of what Yu Feng said. Because he knew that zero matter was a special substance in a different dimension of space-time. Strictly speaking, although the leakage of zero matter and Pym particles is an accident, it is also an experimental accident. It's just that, need a highly accomplished mage to save him. Is there still a mage in this world? Even if there really is, where are there any mages with extremely high magical attainments in this place? Tony had a little hope, but soon his face became desperate. Alas, I think I'm really dead. In this ghost place, where did the mages with extremely high magical attainments come from? Quote. Yu Feng smiled mysteriously at this time. Maybe that mage is far away in the sky, close at hand. Huh. Tony suddenly frowned when he heard this, blinked and looked at Yu Feng, as if he thought of something, suddenly opened his eyes, and pointed at Yu Feng excitedly. Could it, you? Good. Yu Feng smiled and nodded. Although I am an undead extraordinaire, I am also a mage. I came from a place called Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, and was a wizarding teacher there. Quote. Magic teacher. Tony wondered, but you look. Looks like a child, doesn't it? Yu Feng deliberately snorted coldly. Little brat, do you think we magicians can be the same as ordinary people? I'm rejuvenating. Quote. Rejuvenation. Tony was slightly startled, but soon his eyes lit up, and he said with a look of adoration, it's amazing. Then you hurry up and get me out. Quote. Nope. Yu Feng shook his head and said, as an undead extraordinary, I can't take souls out casually, but I have professional ethics. Otherwise, wouldn't it be chaotic for all extradited persons to do this? Unless. When Tony heard this, he couldn't help but feel a little desperate, but when he heard Yu Feng's words, unless, he raised his little head sharply. Unless what? Yu Feng smiled slightly. Unless you worship me as a teacher. From then on he became my apprentice, faithful to me for the rest of his life. Urgent for the needs of the teacher, want to be thought by the teacher, but also kneel 3 times and prostrate, swear religiously, make offerings, so that I can become my apprentice. I cannot hesitate to lose the origin, break the rules of this hell, and save you out. Quote. Oh, yes. Tony was stunned when he heard this, so complicated. And I want to make offerings, I don't have anything to worship now. Quote. Yu Feng glanced at Tony lightly and said, complicated. These are all gifts. Worship is essential, and every student at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry has to do this. Of course, if you are in a special situation, the offering is not necessary, but it must be made up after you were rescued. Quote. Tony was immediately overjoyed when he heard this, and nodded busily. Good. Definitely. Thank you, teacher. Quote. He is a typical super-rich second generation, and the worship is of course trivial. Thinking of this, Tony bowed down 3 times and bowed down according to Yu Feng's words, looking respectful. He couldn't wait to leave this place. Yu Feng saw that he had fooled this 6-year-old little furry boy Tony like this, and his stomach hurt with laughter in his heart. Of course, he didn't do it purely for fun. Tony, this kid, is a real prodigy, a genius, and the future is Iron Man who controls an entire Stark Industries group. The benefits of making this guy his student, for him in the future are naturally self-evident. These are all things that come with you, taking advantage of Tony's young age now. Tony, our mage and apprentice at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, the first thing we need to pay attention to is to respect the teacher. Then there is the practice of magic, powers, physical skills, etc. This must be remembered. Yu Kaide continued to fool Tony. While Tony was still young, he had to let him deeply integrate the concept of respecting the teacher into his mind. Well, don't worry, teacher, I will definitely remember. Tony nodded solemnly. Good. Yu Feng nodded in satisfaction. Now that you know, then teacher, I will show you some of the magic methods of our Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, and let you open your eyes first. Quote. Since you want to fool Tony, of course, you have to do a full set of tricks. If you don't come out with some real skills, with the cleverness of Tony, this little guy, there will always be some doubts. And children worship the strong. Casting some powerful means can make Tony worship him to death. Of course, the main reason is that the black light particles on and below Yu Feng's body have not absorbed the energy saturation, and he has to wait until it is saturated before he can leave. So for now, just take advantage of this time to continue to brainwash Tony's goods. Yu Feng said. A Dao-seeking jade black light particle flew along his hand, and finally distorted and transformed into a slender black knife like the heavenly lock and the cutting moon. Even in this dark latitude space, it was shining with a black metallic luster. Seeing this, Tony's eyes lit up. It's amazing. Yu Feng smiled slightly, and waved his palm gently. Wow, Immediately, an energy escaped from the slender knife body, and the space was like a crack, and a crescent-like black light suddenly condensed. Finally, it rolled into the depths of darkness. Everywhere he went, the wind was raging, and the momentum could be described as powerful. Tony gasped. This scene surprised him. To be honest, although he has begun to gradually accept the existence of magic in this world, the scientific concepts instilled in his mind since childhood are still extremely deep, and it is not so easy to be replaced by the concept of magic. But now this scene has gradually crushed the deep-rooted scientific ideas in his heart. The concept of magic had begun to penetrate deep into his heart. Yu Feng looked at the surprised and excited look on Tony's little face, knowing that this little guy had completely accepted the existence of magic at the moment. However, Yu Kaide will not really teach Tony any Rausch magic. After all, the ability he casts belongs to the category of supernatural abilities to be precise, and although it can impersonate magic from the visual point of view, it cannot be taught to others at all. So Yu Feng thought for a while, and then continued to flicker. Tony, let me ask you a question. Well, teacher, please speak. Tony said respectfully. Do you think the science of the world today? What's the difference with magic? Quote. The difference between science and magic. Tony stared at his small face slightly. Coco is materialism, and magic is idealism. The two are opposites. Quote. Wrong. Yu Feng knocked Tony with a pop, and said with the appearance of an old god. Science and magic are actually common, there is no opposite difference. Whether it is science or magic, the development to the end of the extreme can break the mystery of the universe. Quote. So Tony, what I'm telling you is that whether it's science or magic, you have to take it seriously. Science, in particular, is more like a kind of foundation for learning magic. Only when science is done well can magic have the opportunity to have profound attainments. Quote. Each of our Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry students can be said to be a knowledgeable scientist. Saying that, Yu Feng looked at Tony and said the last and most important sentence. If you want to learn the real Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry magic from me, you must first learn the science well, got it? I guess this point should not be a difficult thing for you based on your family situation, right? Quote. Well, I understand the teacher. Tony looked like he had realized. He originally thought about whether he would stop learning that scientific knowledge in the future. But now, since the teacher said that science is an important foundation for learning magic, he naturally cannot give up learning scientific knowledge. Not only can't you give up, but you have to study harder than before. Looking at the extremely energetic look on Tony's little face, Yu Feng couldn't help but smile slightly. He seems to remember that in the original plot, there was a period of great decadence on Tony's growth path, until the year Howard was killed by the Winter Soldier, and he began to regain his strength and completely develop Stark Industries. But now under his influence, Tony's life trajectory may undergo some different changes. Just thinking in his heart, suddenly Yu Feng's eyes moved slightly. Feel the black light particles all over your body, find that these light particles have all reached a saturated state. It's just that, but he still didn't stop absorbing the energy in this dark dimensional space-time. On the contrary, it seems that the absorption has become more intense. At the same time, black light particles flowed out from his body, continuously pouring into the 5 black light particles of Seeking Dao Jade with a black metallic luster in front of him. There was even a strange, equally majestic energy, which turned into a thick fluid-like energy substance and rushed towards his 5 Dao Seeking Jade black light particles. Fierce winds started blowing around, and his 5 Dao Seeking Jade black light particles suddenly swelled up again, constantly getting bigger and bigger. From bowling balls to the height of a person, to almost the size of a house. Tony opened his mouth wide when he saw this, and then looked at Yu Feng, and a pair of eyes surged with adoration. He thought that Yu Feng was going to show him some magical ability again. Yu Feng's brows furrowed tightly. Because logically speaking, his Dao Jade black light particles should have temporarily reached the limit of their ability to become larger. But now it suddenly skyrocketed again. Imagine the strangely powerful energy that was absorbed just now. Human, you actually dare to steal my power. Suddenly, a majestic force that filled the entire space suddenly resounded from all around. Deafening, Yu Feng's gaze suddenly froze. As soon as this voice appeared, in the dark void in front of him, a huge face appeared that seemed to be formed by the gathering of energy streamers. Immediately, a suffocating terrifying aura suddenly pressed down on Yu Feng's heart. Yu Feng's pupils shrank slightly. Sure enough, Dormammu. I just sucked Dormammu accidentally, sucked the energy from Dormammu's body. The free dark energy in this dark dimension naturally cannot be compared to the power that exists in Dormammu. That's why it brought such a huge change to Yu Feng's Dao-seeking jade black light particles. Yu Feng glanced at his growing jade black light particles. I saw that the 5 Dao-seeking jade black light particles had merged together at this moment, turning into the size of a tall building, and they were still expanding. This made Yu Feng's face twitch. According to this appearance, wouldn't his Dao-seeking jade black light particles become the rhythm of expanding Dao-seeking jade black light particles? You still suck, human, like ants. Dormammu's majestic and angry voice came. At the same time, the originally dark dimensional space around began to show a variety of strange colors, but it was not a bright color, but a color that permeated with darkness, death, and ruin. Meteorite-like boulders gradually rose, and faintly dark red flames gradually burned up. A piece of ground beneath Yu Feng also began to crack, turning into shattered boulders. And the dark dimensional demon god Dormammu, who revealed a huge dark face in front of him, seemed to have flames burning faintly around him, and a pair of eyes shining with a strange dark purple light stared at Yu Feng. There was an uproar. Yikes! In the dark sky, countless sharp boulders entwined with the power of dark magic slammed towards Yu Feng and Tony. Yu Feng's gaze froze. The golden light around him flickered, and he easily dodged it. With his light speed ability, even if his strength cannot compete with Dormammu, Dormammu wants to attack him. What's more, right now, Yu Feng has been saturated with energy absorption and can leave this dark dimensional space anytime and anywhere. Although Dormammu is basically an invincible existence in his dark dimensional space, he is also bound by this dimensional space and cannot come to Earth. So basically the safety issue, Yu Feng does not have to worry. Yu Feng's main concern was still what would change in the end of his abnormal jade black light particles. Boom! Seeing that the tiny human ant in front of him could actually dodge his attacks so easily, Dormammu couldn't help but be surprised. But soon snorted coldly. A huge dark purple dark energy condensed in that huge mouth, and in the blink of an eye, it suddenly attacked Yu Feng again. Seeing the extremely violent and suffocating dark energy death light coming madly, Yu Feng's eyes condensed slightly. I have to say that this Dormammu's attack power is absolutely powerful. And this is a dark magic energy attack. Yu Feng could feel that if he was attacked by this energy, he would definitely be injured. Without hesitation, prepare to dodge again. Huh. However, at this moment, Yu Feng couldn't help but chuckle lightly, because suddenly the time and space in front of him suddenly shattered like a mirror image. Cracks clicked, seemingly slowly, but extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, the space shattered like a mirror, and then a gold-rimmed white robe suddenly appeared from it, bareheaded. Yes, bald head. This bald head was so round and so bright, Yu Feng couldn't help but be stunned when he saw it. I saw that the bald white palm moved, and the golden lines with fireworks were outlined one after another, and countless mysterious textures were outlined in an instant, turning into a huge golden magic shield. Rumble. Dormammu's dark purple dark magic energy slammed into the golden magic shield, and suddenly countless energy sparks burst out from the space, and then I saw that the magic shield clicked and there was actually a crack like a spider's web. Let's go. The bald head ignored it. Suddenly, he turned around, revealing a woman's face, and then directly palmed it. Wow! Yu Feng felt that his body actually floated up in the air. The next moment, the surrounding space shattered like a mirror again, and at the same time, energy sparks behind him burst open, and a portal appeared, directly shrouding the figures of Yu Feng and Tony. The bald woman figure also entered. Then several people disappeared in an instant. Dormammu's dark magic energy attack suddenly fell into vain. HMPH. Seeing this, Dormammu snorted coldly. Is it from the supreme mage who is destined to die on Earth? Dare to run into my dark dimension. Find death. You can't escape. Quote. Dormammu roared, and suddenly a furious dark force swept around. Click. I saw that the space on the side suddenly cracked, the magic portal appeared, and the figure of the bald woman stumbled slightly and reappeared. Yu Feng, however, landed extremely steadily. Tony was completely dumbfounded at this moment, looking at the huge Dormammu face not far away, and some of the conditions he had just experienced. He couldn't help but feel a little confused. Oops, the bald woman frowned deeply at the moment. My strength has not yet recovered, and under the interference of Dormammu, I can't leave this dark dimensional space with multiple people for the time being. Yu Feng looked at the woman quietly. He had probably guessed the woman's identity. If there is no mistake, this monk-like woman should be the current supreme mage on the earth, Ji Yuyi. I didn't expect to meet Ancient One mage in this dark dimension, Yu Feng secretly said in his heart. Logically, every supreme mage should be incompatible with Dormammu, and rarely spend a lot of power descending into the dark dimension. But Yu Feng knew a secret of Ji Yuyi. That is, although Ji Yuyi is a supreme mage, he is absorbing the power of the dark dimension to cultivate. At this moment, the reason why he encountered Ji Yuyi in this dark dimension should be that Ji Yuyi happened to be absorbing the power in the dark dimension to cultivate, but he suddenly sensed the breath of him and Tony, and came to the rescue. After all, although Ji Yuyi absorbed the power of darkness to cultivate, he was still a compassionate monk by nature. Where is there a reason why death cannot be saved? It's just that Ji Yuyi's state at this moment doesn't seem to be too good. Absorbing the power of the dark dimension for magic cultivation is not an easy task. Notice, the magic cultivation of mages is to extract energy from dimensions, and then shape these energies into various weapons through specific programs, either for defense, or for attack, or for special abilities such as teleportation, mirror dimensional space shuttle, and flight. This procedure is also called a spell. The energy extracted from the dimension is the source power of magic. Therefore, it is clear how much the energy extracted from the dimension and whether it is powerful or not is worth the power of the magic cast. The dark power in the dark dimension is an extremely powerful and advanced energy, and absorbing it for cultivation can undoubtedly make a mage more powerful than before. Merely, dark energy can invisibly erode people's minds. And once you extract power in the dark dimension, it is easy to be seduced and controlled by Dormammu. After all, not everyone can possess black light particles, like Yu Feng, who can swallow energy in this dark dimension at will, and the nature is like zero matter. Dormammu himself could not come to Earth, but he could train many believers to do things for him, and those believers, many of them are mages who have tasted the power benefits of the dark dimension and have been seduced by Dormammu. Only a supreme mage-level existence with a profound cultivation like Ji Yuyi can continue to maintain his true heart. But even so, the Ancient One is more or less affected by the dark energy. Ji Yuyi was obviously in a state that was not quite right at his eyes. It seems that forcibly interrupting her cultivation and breaking into the dark dimension to save people has caused the dark energy to form some countermeasures against her. Yu Feng's gaze froze, because at this moment, he felt that his seeking jade black light particles had stopped and continued to rise, and as soon as his mind moved, the black energy around him flashed like electricity, and the next moment it appeared above his head, almost covering the sky, making people very shocked to see. Furuchi immediately noticed this incredible scene. Especially when she noticed that the huge black ball seemed to have a special connection with the seemingly harmless 8 or 9-year-old child next to her, she couldn't help but say in amazement. "Child, who are you? How did you come to the dimensional space? Also, what is it?" Quote. When Tony on the side heard this, he immediately said, "We are from Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry." Forehead cough. Yu Feng immediately coughed and hurriedly pulled Tony's goods aside. In case this guy said what kind of Raushiko, undead extradition, he was, it would be a little embarrassing at that time. After all, Furuchi could completely see that Tony was not dead. Pulling Tony, Yu Feng followed and pretended to say to Ji Yuyi, "Yes, we are from Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Due to a special experimental accident, this little guy came here, and I, who came to take my students out of here, encountered some special trouble." Quote. When Ji Yuyi heard this, he couldn't help but hear a little cloudy. Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. What is that place? As the supreme mage on Earth and a super senior in the field of magic, how did she not know that there was such a magic school? And also, this little child in front of him, who is obviously only 8 or 9 years old, actually became a teacher. This couldn't help but make Ji Yuyi feel even more strange after hearing it. But at this time, Dormammu had already attacked again. The furious dark energy surged like a hurricane, and they saw the dark energy in the sky turn into huge blades with metallic color, attacking them like a torrential rain. Ji Yuyi's face immediately changed. In the nick of time, the surrounding Tao energy rays instantly outlined into a dazzling magic shield, resisting this attack. But Ji Yuyi's brows furrowed and he snorted. Dormammu's attack is simply too powerful. Especially in this dark dimension at the moment, Dormammu's power is almost invincible, and after her magic shield withstands several attacks, the light soon dims, and even when she snorts, blood oozes from the corners of her mouth. HMPH. A mage who does not measure himself. Quote, seeing this, Dormammu immediately sneered, "It's hard to protect yourself, do you still want to protect others? A few of you will all die." Quote. Saying that, he saw Dormammu's huge figure suddenly appear completely from the darkness, followed by a hand towards Ji Yuyi, Yukaide and Tony, looking like he was going to shoot them to death completely. Yu Feng's eyes suddenly lit up at this moment. Ji Yuyi appeared too suddenly before, and he hadn't noticed the energy fluctuations around Ji Yuyi when he exerted his magical power. At this moment, feeling Ji Yuyi's magic so closely, he suddenly had a strange feeling that the energy of the black light particles around him became more cheerful. This feeling, Yu Feng's eyes flashed slightly, it seems to be a bit similar to the original Qin's ability to feed each other, and the light particles absorbing the power of the phoenix are a bit like could it be that I can also feed each other with Ji Yuyi? If the absorption of mysterious substances is a great evolution of Yu Feng's ability, then the ability to feed each other is a small enhancement to Yu Feng's ability. Originally, Yu Feng thought that the mutual feeding reaction of his ability could only be produced with some special mutants. But right now, it seems that it's not just mutants. A mage with profound cultivation like Ji Yuyi can also feed each other with his abilities. Without the slightest hesitation, just as Dormammu's giant hand that seemed to be able to slap an entire planet slammed in, Yu Feng's palm touched Ji Yuyi's back. Furuchi's body was extremely thin. But it contained a deep and majestic strange power, and at the moment when Yu Feng touched and particleized the ancient light, that strange power seemed to have found a catharsis and exploded. Ji Yuyi's pupils shrank suddenly. But not out of shock, but out of surprise. Because at this moment, she felt that all the strength of her whole body had recovered to the peak, and the injuries she had just suffered were all gone, as if time had been reversed. At this time, she was surprised to find that the dark energy around her, unexpectedly, madness rushed towards her like crazy. Her body seemed to turn into countless strange black rays. And it was this black light that not only released the potential hidden in her body, but also helped her absorb countless dark energies in this dark dimension like a bottomless pit. Furuchi soon discovered that all this came from Yukaide behind her. His face flashed with surprise. But she knew this was not the time to delve into such things. Feeling Dormammu's palm slap, the powerful dark power surged like mountains and seas, and a blood-colored magic inscription appeared in Ji Yuyi's eyebrows, and the magic shield outlined by golden energy lines suddenly shone brightly. But it was no longer a brilliant gold, but a dark red color like magma, and the breath was the same as the energy in this dark dimension right now. Bang! Dormammu slapped his palm, and the entire dark dimension seemed to tremble. But just when Dormammu thought that this palm could slap the other party into scum, those huge dark purple eyes froze, and he saw the magic shield that shrouded the ancient people, it didn't break. How could it be? Dormammu was deeply surprised, but soon the huge face showed surprise and anger. HMPH. I see. Stupid mage actually wants to absorb the power of darkness to deal with the darkness itself. Don't you know that this dark dimension belongs to me? Without me, you wouldn't want to use any trace of dark energy in this space. Quote. As he spoke, his mind moved, as if blocking the flow of Zholiang. But nothing has changed around them. It was still countless dark energies surging madly towards Ji Yuyi's side. What's going on? Ji Yuyi looked at Dormammu and sneered, Dormammu, you are just the first creature who happened to come to this dark dimension. The power of the dark dimension belongs to everyone in the multiverse, not just yours. Quote. Of course, having said that, Koichi also knew that under the interference of Dormammu, it was indeed difficult for ordinary mages to draw power from the dark dimension. So she was very curious about what Yu Feng behind her had done to her. Why does her whole body seem to be in a strange black light form? Why was she able to have such a perverted dark energy absorption speed at this moment, and she was not even afraid of Dormammu's interference? Thinking about it, Ji Yuyi couldn't help but want to inquire about the thought transmission. However, Yu Feng seemed to know that Furuchi was going to ask him. Suddenly, he spoke one step ahead. This is the means of our Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Don't say more, don't ask more, exert your strength with all your heart, cooperate with me. Ji Yuyi heard this, but soon nodded without the slightest hesitation, took a deep breath and said, "Good." Then he unreservedly displayed his strength, all the cultivation and comprehension of magic, and cooperated with Yu Feng. In an instant, wow, as if the entire dark dimension was shaking, the huge Tao-seeking jade black light particle that originally hung above the feather maple and stayed quietly in the sky without any reaction, actually began to rise again at this moment, constantly expanding, expanding, and expanding again. Until it swells to the point that the volume has surpassed Dormammu. Still swelling. From the previous huge Tao-seeking jade black light particles, it has completely evolved into the expanding seeking Tao jade black light particles like in the fire shadow. Dormammu was taken aback. He originally saw that the big black block did not have any energy fluctuations, and he did not pay much attention. But at this moment, this thing suddenly swelled to a point that was even bigger than him, and also exuded a terrifying power that seemed to be able to devour everything and annihilate everything, which made him frightened and couldn't help but be vigilant. At this moment, Tony was completely stunned when he saw this scene. When Ji Yuyi saw this, his eyes were also wide open, and his eyes were incredible. She was already very curious about this thing and didn't know what it was. At this moment, she finally knew that this was a special magic from the little boy mage of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, who seemed harmless to humans and animals in front of her, only 8 or 9 years old. I couldn't help but become more and more curious about Yu Feng and the magical Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Yu Feng's eyes became brighter and brighter. At the moment when Ji Yuyi assimilated the light particles, he could clearly feel that he had a higher control over the black light particles on his whole body. Especially now, Furuchi has unreservedly unfolded his mysteries of magic, and due to the assimilation of light particles, Yukaide can clearly sense a special use of energy when magic is cast. That method is the program of using magical energy. It is the program that Yu Feng is most desperately needed, and can use his power most efficiently. Interesting, is this magic? Yu Feng's eyes lit up like stars. Magic is a way to use energy efficiently. Quote, previously, I only had empty energy, but I didn't know how, so I could only use my power in an extremely crude way. But now, in the state of assimilation with the ancient light particles, with the power of the Ancient One, I can exert my power in a completely different way. Ordinary mages cast magic and draw power from the multiverse dimension as an essential, vital and difficult step. But Yu Feng was different. He has enormous power in his own right. It can also use black light particles to easily and casually absorb energy in the dark dimension. Energy is not a problem for him. The main thing he lacks is the means to control these energies. Magic is the best way for me to control my power. Feeling the moment of assimilation with Ji Yuyi Photon, Ji Yuyi's thin but strange body transmitted the meaning of energy flow, and a smile curled at the corner of Yu Feng's mouth. A magic spell is actually a password to open the program of magic. As a supreme mage level figure, Ji Yuyi has basically achieved the point of moving magic at will, but he no longer has to chant spells. Her whole person is a supercomputer full of magic programs. And the assimilation of feather maple and ancient light particles is equivalent to AU inserted into it, constantly copying those magic programs and absorbing those magical mysteries at the speed of light. As a result, Yu Feng quickly grew from a magical Xiaobai to a supreme mage like Ji Yuyi in a short period of time. Of course, strictly speaking, Yu Feng was not yet able to reach the level of a supreme mage like Ji Yuyi. He just copied the magic of Koichi. Reenactment does not mean complete comprehension. Any magic, you can never copy, it can never be truly profound, only to precipitate your own magic mysteries, can be regarded as a crucial step in the path of magic to become a master. After all, Yu Feng is Yu Feng, and Ji Yuyi is Ji Yuyi. Ji Yuyi's many magic comprehensions were actually not suitable for Yu Feng. But anyway, this moment is still extremely helpful to Yufeng. Yufeng never expected that when he and Ji Yuyi assimilated light particles, the ability to feed each other between the two was so strange. He gave Furuchi the ability to absorb the energy of the dark dimension as he pleased. Ji Yuyi, on the other hand, was like a Daigo empowerment, allowing him to grasp many profound, magic mysteries at the speed of light in an instant. Although the comprehension was not profound, after all, Yufeng really lacked a lot of magic foundation practice, but it was undoubtedly of great help to him at the moment. Looking at the expansion-seeking jade black light particles that accidentally absorbed the power of Dormammu, which was fused by many Dao-seeking jade black light particles, and at this moment, through the magic mysterious increase containing the power of the Ancient One, the expansion-seeking jade black light particles that continued to expand wildly, Yufeng's eyes became brighter and brighter. Until there was a touch of madness in his eyes. Attack! Boom! The swelling jade black light particles surged madly, and the devouring power that surged from them, everywhere it went, whether it was a floating meteorite or a limited place in the dark dimension, it was shattered and annihilated. A hurricane of dark energy. The entire swelling jade black light grain Buddha was like a super huge black hole, and in the blink of an eye, it had swelled in front of Dormammu's eyes, looking like it was about to engulf it. HMPH. Dormammu snorted coldly. He is basically an invincible existence in the dark dimension. After all, he is one of the famous cosmic demon gods, and the name of the Dark Lord is not called in vain. Although the strange-looking huge black ball at the moment seems to be imposing, annihilating everything, and looking like it wants to smash the entire dark dimension into chaos, in fact, in his opinion, it is just a hybrid of power, which is nothing. Dormammu's dark purple eyes bloomed with a faint light, and the moment he snorted coldly, he was about to exert the true power that belonged to his dark dimensional lord, causing the huge black ball to shatter, and then shattering the bones of those humans. But at this moment, Dormammu's gaze froze. I saw that the huge black ball suddenly released an unparalleled powerful devouring absorption force in one direction. And the direction in which this devouring absorption force is directed, it's him. This feeling that a trace of the origin dark power accumulated over the years on his body was actually sucked away in front of his eyes, Dormammu's eyes widened and he was slightly startled. The other party was actually in front of him, blatantly trying to devour and absorb the power in his body. And, was it really done by the other party? Anger. Fury. Find the of death. With a roar, Dormammu's huge dark purple eyes instantly stared at Yufeng, and a dark energy fire full of the aura of death and destruction spewed out from his mouth, which rolled towards Yufeng, and in the blink of an eye, it was above his head. Seeing this, Yufeng curled up a sneer at the corner of his mouth. Swish! In the blink of an eye, the three disappeared in place. When it reappeared, it was already in another direction. Dormammu's eyes widened, and without the slightest hesitation, he attacked Yufeng's side again. It's just that the means of attack turned into extremely fast dark magic swords, and countless huge swords evolved from dark magic condensed from the air, and then 10,000 swords flew in all directions towards Yufeng, blocking all the directions that could escape. At the same time, Dormammu's mouth once again spewed out a furious dark energy fire. The direction was not aimed at Yufeng, but at the black ball that kept sucking his energy. I don't know why this ghost thing can actually forcibly absorb a trace of the origin dark power from him, although under his blockade, the amount of it is very small. But that's where he came from. Not to mention a slightest, even a trace of 100,000th is enough to make him completely furious. It's just that, just as his dark energy fire attacked the black orb, suddenly the black orb emitted an even more violent suction force, absorbing the attack he had issued. This made Dormammu wink. How is it possible? Yufeng's figure completely turned into a state of light particles, constantly swimming between those huge dark magic swords, and it seemed to be very comfortable. Feeling a trace of extremely pure dark power continuously pouring into his body, the smile at the corner of Yufeng's mouth became stronger and stronger. Very good. It is worthy of the dark power in Dormammu, and it is really pure enough. Sure enough, my decision to suck more Dormammu was the right one. Quote, it is simply impossible to kill Dormammu in this dark dimension. Yufeng also knew that even if his swollen Dao Jade black light particles that were accidentally generated were extraordinary, coupled with Ji Yuyi's magic, it would only make Dormammu slightly embarrassed at most. If you really want to kill Dormammu, and still in the dark dimension, the other party's lair, it is simply a fantasy. Therefore, it is really a waste to smash the swelling jade black light particles directly towards Dormammu to exert their aggressiveness, and then die on this. It is better to use the devouring and absorption power that is powerful enough to forcibly plunder the power from Dormammu, and absorb Dormammu's Guy more, so that the black light particles all over his body are filled with the pure dark power belonging to Dormammu, which is more cost-effective. After all, the former is a one-time means of attack. Whether the next time can create such an expansive jade black light particle is still two words. However, although Dormammu's pure dark energy can no longer be used as a mysterious substance, due to the absorption of zero-crossing matter, it can permanently strengthen his light particles. Just like the power of the Phoenix has the same amplification effect on his light particles. Dormammu's power is good. Feeling that the black light particles on his body became active again one by one, as if they had broken through some kind of restriction and produced an advanced level, Yufeng was very happy in his heart. Previously, Dormammu's power was accidentally sucked by the jade black light particles, and he didn't feel much yet. After all, seeking the jade black light particles is not strictly one of the components of the light particles on his body, it is a kind of separated light particle energy materialization. But right now, as the pure dark energy on Dormammu's body entered his body, strengthening his black light particles, Yufeng suddenly had a very unusual feeling. He could clearly feel that the light particles on his body had undergone a strange metamorphosis. If his elements turned into black light particles before, they belonged to the first gear. So at this moment, it seems that it has completely entered the state of second gear. Yufeng can now understand why those Dormammu's disciple mages like to perform various rituals and want to obtain the power that Dormammu has given them. This power is indeed cool. It's just that others have to do all kinds of rituals, begging Dormammu for strength, and in the end, they will be controlled by Dormammu. Yufeng did not have this constraint at all, because he was completely snatched from Dormammu's power. If you let those Dormammu believers know that there is such an operation in this world, you have to widen your eyes one by one, and your eyeballs will fall. Ji Yuyi's face at this moment was more than incredulous, shocked, surprised, and so on. It's quirky. Since she and Yufeng were in a state of assimilation of light particles, she could certainly feel the changes in Yufeng's body. When it was discovered that this guy Yufeng, he was actually robbing Dormammu's power, and looking at Yufeng's eyes was like looking at a monster. So Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, what exactly is a school? At the same time, Ji Yuyi suddenly became extremely curious about the Huo Magic School that Yufeng had mentioned earlier. Even a child in this school is so perverted, so what kind of existence should those other more powerful mages be? Koichi couldn't imagine it. She originally thought that most of the mages on Earth would gather at Karmataj, the peak of the Himalayas, where she taught magic. Unexpectedly, there was a mysterious and magical school in this world that even she did not know about, Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Tony was already completely worshipping the 5 bodies of Feather Maple at this moment. Looking at the huge black giant sword that kept galloping around him in the state of moving at the speed of light, the shocking, but tense and exciting feeling made his whole person feel a little bloody. So I secretly swore in my heart, he must learn magic well with the teacher. He will definitely become an excellent student at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Where did Furuchi and Tony know that the Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, mentioned by Yukaide, was just his bragging? Yufeng naturally didn't know what was going on in the hearts of the two, and while dodging Dormammu's magical attack, he single-mindedly perceived the change in his ability. In the second rank, light particle state, not only his comprehensive ability of shining fruits has been greatly increased. The swelling jade black light particle was affected by him, and the power of devouring and absorption suddenly increased. Although the power of absorption has skyrocketed, it has even absorbed Dormammu's dark power attack. But there is clearly a limit. And Dormammu's attack is not ineffective at all. The entire swelling jade black light particle was already cracking and dissipating at a speed visible to the naked eye. Dormammu was simply furious. Although he saw that the huge black ball had a tendency to crack and dissipate, an even more crazy suction force swept towards him. At the same time, that human kid actually has a super speed that exceeds the speed of light, and under the intention of dodging, he can't even touch a hair of the other party. And more importantly, the other party is not afraid of the blockade of power in the dark dimension at all. In the dark dimension, he was even more comfortable than him. It was as if the other party was the master of this dark dimension. This made Dormammu not only half angry, but also a sense of vigilance in his heart. Because he knew that although he was the lord of the dark dimension, as Ji Yuyi said, the dark dimension belonged to everyone in the entire multiverse. He will not be the eternal master of this dark space. If anyone can be recognized by this dark dimensional space, then his status as a Dark Lord may not be guaranteed. Thinking about it, Dormammu's gaze towards Yufeng couldn't help but narrow slightly. He is ready to use all means, no matter what, to destroy this human brat in front of him. And at this moment, suddenly Yufeng stopped moving from the speed of light, and Dormammu's eyes immediately lit up when he saw this, and he did not hesitate to launch his strongest magic attack, which was bound to kill this person. But at this moment, the corners of Yufeng's mouth turned up. Okay, after sucking this last vote, it's time to leave. The mind moved. Bang! Suddenly, the swelling jade black light particle actually burst open. The terrifying bursting energy instantly caused Dormammu's huge body to be swept out. At the same time, a violent devouring suction force that seemed to be brewing a lot launched the last wave of absorption. Boom! Seeing the power on Dormammu's body, it was directly sucked out of a large ball in an instant, and along with Yufeng's several figures, it suddenly faded and disappeared in this dark dimensional space, and soon there was no trace. Dormammu's body quickly stabilized, but seeing Yufeng and the others who no longer had the slightest trace in front of him, he couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. With the look of fury on his face, he burst out madly, sharply, and furiously. Abominable boy, I Dormammu will never let you go. Phew! As a circle of energy fireworks rotated and cut from the space, an intertwined dark energy twisted and penetrated like a fluid, but suddenly a strong suction force flowed, and the dark energy that was constantly twisting and struggling like a fluid suddenly contracted. Until it was the size of a slap, a golden light suddenly shone through and disappeared completely. And the golden light gradually dispersed, turning into three figures appeared. Ji Yuyi breathed a long sigh of relief. It's finally time to leave the dark dimensional space. Being snatched away of his own power by someone is estimated to be violent for anyone, let alone Dormammu, the cosmic demon god, a dimensional space lord level existence. Completely furious, to be honest, although she is a supreme mage, she is more than a little bit worse than Dormammu without an artifact. Even with the blessing of that strange brat from the Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, I am afraid that he will be crushed into slag in an instant, and it will be too late to escape. Fortunately, that strange boy seems to have a way to quickly leave the dark dimension. Thinking about it, Furuchi looked around. It is surrounded by high-rise buildings. But the strange thing is that these high-rise buildings are all horizontally and vertically. And they stood on top of a horizontal building. The whole scene looks as weird as it gets. Here, Tony saw that he had just come out of the dark dimension, and when he saw such a strange scene around him, he was first stunned, and looked around with wide eyes. This is the mirror dimensional space. Furuchi smiled and looked at Tony. Child, this is the most common interdimensional space that mages can communicate with. You should have only come into contact with magic, so you don't know this, right? Quote. Tony nodded. The teacher accepted me as a student at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Quote. Tony said and grinned. At the mention of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, a proud look appeared on his face. Ahem. Yufeng coughed in the back, walked over, looked at Tony with the appearance of an old god, and said, Tony, teacher, I walk in this world, what I want is to live as an ordinary person and understand the true meaning of the world. You can't just meet a random person and say you're a student of Hogwarts Wizardry, understand? Otherwise, if you are heard by some tough enemies in our school, maybe they will come and get you. Quote. So terrible. Tony looked scared and shrunk his neck, then I won't say anything about it later. Quote. When Ji Yuyi saw this scene, he suddenly wanted to laugh. Although she knew that Yi Yufeng's ability was indeed qualified to be a magic mentor. However, watching the scene of an 8 or 9-year-old child reprimanding another 6 or 7-year-old child was really interesting, especially what Yufeng said just now. Feel the true meaning of the world. It seems quite reasonable, but it sounds weird when it comes out of the mouth of an 8 or 9-year-old child. By the way, my name is Koichi, Taj from the Himalayas. I still don't know what your name is, little brother. Furuichi asked with a smile, looking like the big sister of the nunnery next door. Hearing the words, little brother, Yufeng couldn't help but feel a little painful. It's okay to call him like the witch and the spirit butterfly. You always feel very strange when you call me like this. Oh yes, how old are you? It should have lived for a long, long time, right? Is it suspected of calling me little brother pretending to be tender? Although he complained slightly in his heart, Yufeng still replied. You can call me you. Oh, feather, quote, Furuichi muttered, as if to choose something out of the name, and suddenly smiled again. I wonder if you are interested in coming to my side to exchange magic, you. Quote. Communication magic. Yu Feng's heart moved. To be honest, he was still very interested in going to Ji Yuyi's side. Although he learned the essence of Ancient One's magic due to the ability of photon assimilation, he still did not have too deep basic knowledge of magic. He remembered that there were a lot of magic books over there in Ji Yuyi. If he used his light-speed memory ability to read those magic books, isn't it beautiful? Not only can you exercise your memory and thinking ability with the profound knowledge in it, but you can also learn a lot of magical knowledge by the way and enrich your magic experience. What's more, there is another wonderful thing on Ji Yuyi's side that can attract him. Eyes of Agamotto, one of the Infinity Stones time gem. Infinity Stones don't need to think about it, they definitely belong to the category of mysterious substances. If he absorbs the power in the mysterious gem, how far can his shining fruit ability evolve? Thinking of this, Yufeng couldn't help but look forward to it in his heart. The Infinity Stones were originally his key reference for absorbing mysterious substances, and now he not only relies on the location of the cosmic cube, the location of the space gem, but also has a friendship with the supreme mage Gui, the guardian of the Eye of Agamotto, the time gem. When he thought that he could have 2 Infinity Stones to absorb in the future, his heart couldn't help but get a little excited. Without the slightest hesitation, Yufeng immediately nodded and said, of course, no problem, if I have time, I will go to Karmatage to exchange magical knowledge with you on behalf of our Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. In the laboratory, the steel armor model on the drawing is still a sketch, but it already has a plate and an eye. Helmet details, torso armor details, internal structures, fine parts, intelligent system construction ideas, etc., these were all designed by the current 6-year-old Tony. Of course, design is design. If you want to really make it, it is basically a fantasy at the moment. The external and internal parts of the entire steel armor are easy to make, but the intelligent system technology is not mature at all. Take another 10,000 steps back and think. Where does the power plant to activate the entire steel armor come from? Because it takes a long time to activate a super steel armor, according to calculations, the energy required is enough to power an entire city for years or even decades. The amount of energy required is amazing. Moreover, even with so much energy, the power storage device required to store it all is almost the size of a house. Unless there is a technology that can compress a lot of energy into a small power unit. Otherwise, steel armor will always exist in design and conception. So when Tony heard Yu Kaide say that he had to make a set of steel armor to learn magic, his little face suddenly collapsed. If it really has to be manufactured, it is estimated that it will not be possible until at least 30 years later, right? Tony, if you can't complete this small goal, then learning magic will probably be even more difficult for you. Yu Kaide patted Tony's shoulder, took a sip of coffee, and smiled. Of course, he knew that Tony couldn't make steel armor at all. To make a piece of steel armor, the most important thing is the arc reactor technology. The arc reactor technology was first proposed by Howard and was later carried forward in Tony's hands. Although Howard has developed the arc reactor, it is not mature at all, and even a large arc reactor has not yet been built, let alone a small arc reactor that requires higher technology. Therefore, the manufacture of steel armor is not destined to succeed at this stage. It is precisely because of this that he came up with such a small goal. After all, although he knows some of the essence of magic, he has not learned any basic knowledge of magic orthodoxically. Where can he teach Tony what Rausch magic? After he went to the Ancient One to communicate, he might throw Tony a basic magic book and let him figure it out himself. But Tony's little face suddenly felt a little bitter. I was about to say something, but suddenly my eyes sharpened, as if a golden light suddenly flashed. Seeing this, Tony's heart suddenly tightened. Could it be that the teacher was angry? Immediately, he said, "Don't worry, I will definitely make the armor." Quote. Yu Feng didn't seem to hear anything at all. His eyes were fixed on the steel armor design drawing, and for a moment there seemed to be countless golden rays flashing in his mind. These golden rays are constantly outlined, derived, changed. Gradually, the steel armor design drawing on the design drawing actually seemed to live, and constantly began to enrich itself. Whether it is the external design, the internal structure, and the detailed part detailing, everything became richer, clearer, and even the design and construction of the power unit, the arc reactor, which was not shown on the drawings at all, was gradually outlined. Yu Feng's heart moved. At this moment, his brain is actually rotating in a state of light-speed memory thinking, but when he used to think at light-speed memory, the biggest role was still memory. However, at present, on the basis of memory, it seems to enhance the role of thinking. Or to use another word, that is deduction. Not bad, deduction. Previously, when his brain was thinking at the speed of light, the role of thinking was actually very limited. Because the speed of thinking is too fast, it is easy to get into the horns and difficult to get inspired. But at the moment, it seems that his light-speed thinking ability has been greatly enhanced, not only allowing him to not get into the horn when thinking, but also having a more deduction function. At this moment, Tony's steel armor design blueprint. In fact, this design drawing is not perfect at all, but Yu Feng knows how advanced the future steel armor is, and the current steel armor is actually very bulky in his opinion, and even the first, Mark 1-inch original steel armor made by Tony in the future is not comparable. However, at this moment, this design drawing was in his mind. After the speed of light, combined with the various knowledge in his mind, as well as his understanding of the future steel armor, he actually made the entire design drawing richer and more perfect. Even the rough manufacturing method of the small arc reactor was deduced. This made Yu Feng's eyes light up. I have seen some of Howard's research on the arc reactor technology in the past few days, and at the same time, I still have some understanding of the future steel armor in my mind, coupled with the various knowledge that I have eternally remembered in my mind, so that I have deduced a more complete steel armor design drawing. There is no doubt that my lightspeed memory ability has unknowingly broken through some kind of bottleneck and has been strengthened. And this enhancement is to transform from light-speed memory to light-speed deduction. It's just that the speed of light deduction is not made out of nothing, but it requires a large amount of knowledge. For example, I have studied some of the technology of the arc reactor. For example, I know some designs about the future steel armor, and for example, I have read almost all the engineering and manufacturing books in Stark Industries in the past few days. Yu Feng's gaze became brighter and brighter. With the design drawings that he had in mind at the speed of light at this moment, although it was impossible to create the Iron Man armor like the future at once. However, it is possible to roughly make a sample of steel armor that can be used for combat. However, making steel armor was not something Yu Feng was passionate about. After all, for him, the role of steel armor is extremely limited. But this gave him a good idea. Since I can light speed up the manufacturing drawings of the future steel armor, and the unperfected arc reactor device, then, maybe I can use the speed of light to deduce the formula for making the PIM particle. Quote. Even deduce the manufacturing method of various advanced technologies of Marvel in my mind and manufacture it decades in advance. Moreover, I can also use the speed of light deduction to change the magic of the Ancient One. After all, magic is actually a special program. I can deduce and change it, so as to fuse with my shining fruit ability. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.